Good afternoon. This is the LouRaePodcast. I'm your host, Austin Corris, and today I have Trey Baus. He's a local artist here in Louisville, Kentucky, and we're really excited to have him on the show. Trey, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so you're pretty young. You're actually one of our youngest artists, so...
Really?
Yeah, really.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, but you obviously stand along with the other artists. I think you have a really unique perspective in that kind of art world, because you're just starting out, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. When was your first show?
It was in my sophomore year of high school, actually. There was a little project that our class was having, and right at the end of it, after we all made our pieces, our art teacher just came to us and was like, "Hey, surprise, I'm putting some of them in a competition. Hope you do well." And I mean, it turned out great, honestly. I think I got second place for one of the pieces and then first place for two other ones. It was definitely worth it. And then I had another one in my senior year, and that one did pretty good too.
Did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
For sure. Um, Ever since I was young.
What kind of inspired you to do that? I know you have a couple of artists in your family.
Yeah, I definitely looked up to my aunt, and a good inspiration and like bad inspiration in a sense. You know, I had a couple of members of my family that like really wanted to do art and had some talent in it, but didn't really follow through. So that kind of inspired me to like want to pursue it even more and never really stop.
Where did you get your practice in, or what inspired you originally? Was it just your family, or did you find like comic books or things like that to draw inspiration from?
Oh, for sure, comic books and like graphic novels and everything of that sense. Especially watching, different animated shows and movies and stuff. It was always the biggest thing that I wanted to draw inspiration from, especially just like drawing the characters themselves. It even got to a point where I'd like changed my handwriting to like that comic book style. Yeah, I was always drawing inspiration from that.
Yeah, what about it inspired you so much?
Definitely the artistic style, the bright colors, the different perspectives that those people were able to grab. Another one that I always appreciated was their different contrast, like the ability that comic book artists were able to use their shadows to put so much detail and almost texture to their pieces and characters.
Right, and you carry that on into your pieces as well. You have a lot of dark contrast and you play with perspective a lot.
For sure. That's one thing that I always try to remember whenever I'm sitting down and making something, because it's a really like great way to put so much value to your piece, not money wise, but like value in like the contrast of colors and things like that.
Could you go more into that? What do you mean in terms of value?
Just the different like values of color, like I try to incorporate as many different colors into my pieces as I can, except for like a few select ones where I purposely want to leave it, black and white, or just strictly graphite. But a lot of my pieces I try to incorporate as many different colors as I can. I don't really try to stick to a certain like color scheme. I just, as long as it's vibrant and it has good contrast.
Did you have any mentors in school? I remember you told me that you joined a theater troupe in high school as well. Did that have any impact in your creative thought process or anything?
Oh, for sure. His name was Mr. Schaffner, and he was my tech theater teacher. I joined, I think, my freshman year or my sophomore year of high school. I did it for, the remainder of high school all the way up into my senior year. He kind of opened my eyes up to the fact that, like, there's a lot more art out there than just, pen and paper. I kind of told him that I wanted to do, like, fashion, and was kind of interested in learning how to sew. He told me that he would teach me himself and brought his own sewing machine from home and taught me how to sew with the machine, and we started making costumes for one of the shows. It was a really big like inspiration for me and really pushed me into looking into art in those different aspects and being more creative. Out of the blue, this man got me my own sewing machine and just brought it to my house, and I had no way to really thank him. But yeah, it definitely pushed a lot into me to want to pursue like fashion design as well.
What about fashion appeals to you so much?
Definitely because whenever I was young, it was something that I was never really able to have like access to. I always seen like kids in school that had like really nice clothes or shoes, and shoes was definitely like a big one for me. Because I would go to school wearing the same shoes that like I cut grass in, because I only had like one pair. Wearing cargo shorts that were too big for me, like hanging all the way down to my ankles. It was just always something that like I wanted to have, and then especially getting that inspiration from Mr. Schaffner, it really showed me that I can just like make it myself. And that was always like something that I wanted to pursue in my fashion too, is to like really express the things that like I wanted to have.
So are you working on any kind of projects right now with fashion, or is it more you're trying to kind of figure out how to put creativity into it?
At the moment, I have a thrifted blanket hoodie that I'm making. It's honestly pretty sick. It was like a white and navy blanket that I cut off all of the edgings to, and I'm honestly like saving it for the hood to make like, how like some really big jackets have like that fur outing to the hood. I want to use the side edgings and like put a bunch of them around it to make that like an imitation of that. But the blanket had cat, and I think it had like a card in its mouth or something next to it, some of that nature. But I cut out the pieces and I'm like sewing it all together to make this hoodie. But it's been a lot more challenging than I anticipated. That's honestly why it like took me so long. Just like getting all the measurement right, getting the sewing perfect, especially not just like the measurements, but getting the sewing just perfectly enough to the edge where I can, fold it and sew it perfectly right, to where it's not like a huge edge sticking off, things like that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
But you mostly focus on pen and paper. Is it just out of comfort, or is there something about pencil, graphite, pens that really kind of speaks to you?
I think it's definitely like out of comfort. It was always something that I did when I was young because it was always, available. And drawing for me was always kind of like an escape from whatever's going on. It was definitely something that I always did when I was young. Pencil and paper and pens were just always available. Especially when I was at school. Oh my gosh, I would get in so much trouble for that, just drawing all over whatever got in front of me. No matter if it was my homework, no matter if it was my report card, I didn't care. If it was the ASVAB or, the big old tests and stuff, I didn't care. I'd draw all over it. I got in trouble for that a lot. But I didn't really care, for real.
Yeah, does that still reflect your process now, where it's really just kind of free form, you just kind of draw whatever comes to you, or is there a lot of deliberation?
I definitely just sit down and like draw whatever comes to me. Every now and again, I'll definitely sit down and have something that I'm really like thinking out and working on. Recently, I made like a not very large, but it was on like a pretty large piece of paper. It was a octopus working at a hibachi grill, and he's like cutting up sushi and serving a bowl of noodles and things like that. He's got like egg rolls on the side. It was definitely something that I wanted to like think out, because I wanted to make sure I incorporated like as many different things as I could, and then also incorporating the right colors to really make the things that I wanted to pop. And then also I was thinking a lot about like the whole concept of the piece, because the fact that like those places eat octopus and stuff, and he's literally working there and serving that stuff. Thought it was ironic.
Yeah, you want to add a little bit of personality to all your pieces.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you take a lot of inspiration from everyday life then?
Oh yeah, and every time that I'm like looking around and things like that, I'm always kind of studying, if that makes sense, kind of envisioning like what that structure looks like, what it would look like drawn. But yeah, I'm always like studying my surroundings and just working out how that structure works. Especially when I was young, I would always like look at mechanics in that way. I would kind of break down each piece and imagine like how that mechanic would work. Clocks, for instance, or like doorknobs, things like that.
Yeah, is that why you play with perspective so much? You kind of want to challenge yourself?
Yeah. And especially like, I don't know, perspective has always been like one of my favorite things to play with. Like, even whenever I was young and I was like standing in line for like lunch or something and I would get bored, I would like literally imagine myself in the person in front of me's like perspective and be like, oh, I'm about to get pizza later. You know, like, I don't know how good I was at it, but it was something that I always like played with, like imagining different perspectives. And especially like when I'm making a piece, I'm always thinking about like the right angle that I want kind of like the camera to be at, if that makes sense. And I'm always kind of like reworking the people or whatever things I'm putting in the piece and trying to make sure that it all fits that perspective.
Is that because you want your audience to interact with your pieces in a certain way, or is it just something that you like to do?
I definitely like really enjoy playing with perspective, but I think the main reason why I enjoy it so much is because when you see a piece that has a very like surreal perspective, or even like with fisheye perspectives and things like that, it kind of pulls you in more in a way. It makes you feel like you're more in that scene. You know, if you can get that perspective just right, I feel like it really pulls the audience or whoever the viewer is into it, and they kind of, gravitate to whatever I can get them to look at using either color or shading.
Yeah, you find it a lot more engaging.
Right.
Yeah. And then people can figure out their own ideas, or maybe even empathize with the people that you portray or the scenes that you put into those pieces, and maybe try to imagine themselves in it.
I have a few pieces that people have told me that like it literally feels like they're standing in it, and just kind of like taking in this whole scene around them.
And I think your style is very interesting because it is so graphically inspired. It reminds me a lot of like 90s graffiti art, or like 90s graphic art, like big, colorful, bold pieces that really do catch your eye.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Um, do you find yourself wanting to kind of branch out, or do you feel like that's a good niche for you?
I feel like it's always been like a comfort zone for me, especially because I can kind of lay it down so quickly and it's just something that just like kind of comes to me. I've always enjoyed sitting down and doing a very like realistic graffiti, or not graffiti, graphite work. But here recently, especially now that I've done this style so much, it's kind of fell out of my patient zone, honestly. Like, it's hard for me to want to just sit down and do something like that, for so long now. I could still definitely like accomplish it if I tried, but here recently I've been enjoying this so much, like just doing kind of the whole whimsical graphic art style.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. But you've also done shows, like live painting shows. How did you kind of get into that scene?
It was actually from another artist here, Asia. She reached out and just said, "Hey, I'm doing this live painting show for a conference," and I had no, clue what the conference was going to be about until, she reached out and everything. And, she just kind of said that she was going to need some help for it and, would really appreciate if I came out. And I did. And I showed up, and, she sent me some of the details, a couple days prior. And we kind of discussed, like what it was going to be like before, but it was definitely nothing like what I expected. It was definitely, something that I was very nervous for. But once I showed up, she just kind of like introduced me, to a couple people, and, she kind of set me up to her workshop that she already had going, because she showed up like an hour, actually a few hours before I got there, because it was an 8-hour live painting. And yeah, she killed it. But basically she just like sat me into her workshop, and like it was honestly really cool the way that she just kind of like brought me in, and we both just sat down and just started like troubleshooting a couple of ideas that she had, and we just started bouncing ideas off of each other, and out came this pretty decent piece. And at the end of it, the whole crowd was coming and kind of checking everything out, but it was definitely a lot less tense than I expected, because I was kind of imagining the most dramatic thing possible, probably like us sitting up on a stage and people just sitting there watching us. But in all reality, it was just us kind of behind the conference. And the whole conference was actually about what like a free food world would look like. So our piece was kind of all inspired by, handmade gardens, children, being hands on working with this, and also giving food to, young families and elderly and things like that. So it was a very like eye-opening conversation to sit through, and also inspirational for this piece too. Because that was definitely something that I could relate to.
What was it like collaborating with another artist? Had you really done something that big with somebody else?
No, that was my first time doing anything like that, like doing but like a live painting like that, and then let alone like working that big, then let alone working with another artist to that extent. She really killed it. She made it all, work so smoothly, and the way that we were able to just kind of like bounce ideas off of each other, it was really smooth. And also we kind of like had sectioned off pieces of like the whole painting. There was pieces that she was working on, pieces that I was working on. It was kind of a whole collaborative of both of us, to fill this whole thing up. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Was that the first time that you had done such a large piece like that too?
Oh yeah,
Was it pretty intimidating?
to an extent, especially because like sometimes I found myself like when I'm practicing on working on like larger pieces, I found myself working kind of small if I'm like getting too close to the workspace. So I have to remind myself a lot to like kind of take a step back, view the whole thing, imagine it again, make sure I'm making it big enough to fill this thing, not small enough to, have all the details that I want to put in. Whenever I get really focused into it, then I find myself just drawing like too small for the whole thing. I don't know what it was, but like working that big, it kind of reminded me for me, and especially like taking a step back and, collaborating with Asia definitely like got me to take a step back and evaluate everything that I'm doing. So it all worked out perfectly.
Yeah, it sounds like a valuable experience.
It was.
So when you're actually creating any of your pieces, is there anything that you're hoping to express with it, or do you get anything out of it? Is it healing, or in a way, or is it more about, I guess, the freedom of expression?
It's definitely about like the freedom of expression for me, but also it definitely like was healing for me like whenever I was younger. Like I said before, it was like a big escape for me, to kind of get away from my surroundings. I always wanted to just kind of be in my own realm, and like drawing was always that perfect place for me. And sometimes I can just kind of like imagine that realm and put it on paper. Those pieces for me are like the funnest, and it's the most reinforcing, because afterwards I get such a relief, especially looking at it, and it just makes me smile, and I want other people to feel that way when they look at it.
Is that what pushes you to keep continuing to create?
For sure. It's definitely like a big thing for me. Like after I finish a piece and I get to like take a step back and look at it, and it's just like so amazing, all you can think about is like, wow, I did that, and it just makes me want to make more.
Is there anything that you're hoping to accomplish anytime soon? Anything that you're kind of shooting for or challenge yourself with?
Honestly, the most challenging thing I've been thinking about doing is just getting myself established, like social media wise, posting things on TikTok, making a Facebook page, like more business wise, and I need to get business cards going. Honestly, thinking about different places that I can go to, different festivals, things like that. You know, my family is like so supporting too, and the people around me, like my girlfriend and my friends, you know, they're always throwing different ideas at me, or you know, sharing different festivals that are going on around me. So it's definitely like reassuring.
That's great. You have a nice community around you.
Oh yeah, that's always been a thing for me. You know, I've always had good people.
Yeah. Would you feel that that's kind of the a big part of the Louisville creative scene is everybody's kind of helping each other and looking out for each other?
Oh, for sure. That's always like something that I've always appreciated about Louisville is it's such a tight community. You know, we're always here for each other, and especially when you see, you know, all these hardships that go on around here. You know, that's when all of us stick together even more. And that's what sticks out like the loudest. You know, especially when I got to this gallery, like that was a big thing that I appreciated about you all, was how much you all really support like the local artists, and y'all are just trying to get people out there, and like all the events you all do for just the overall business side of, you know, us artists, and making sure that we're making all the right steps. And you know, you all are really like helping out the art community here in Louisville.
Thanks, man. We're trying. You also help the community out too, though, don't you? You and your mom work for ABA, don't you?
Yeah, me, my mom, and my brother actually.
Oh yeah.
She's been doing it for about 7 years now.
What does ABA stand for?
Applied behavioral therapy. You know, there's a bunch of different phrases for it because everywhere you go it's called different things, but it's basically just behavioral therapy for kids with autism or different, you know, behavioral disorders. We just help kids with maladaptive behavior learn to like cope with their emotions and just become overall like life ready, and to cope with a lot of those big, you know, sensory issues that kids can have, or things like that. You know, and we also kind of help shoot out like ideas for parents, you know, with these kids. And also I think that we also like help provide um, other like occupational therapies, you know, like speech therapy, physical therapy for some of the kids that actually would need that as well. You know, we kind of help all around.
That's great. Do you find a lot of inspiration from like those kids, seeing like their kind of purity and innocence being expressed?
Oh yeah, that was definitely like a big thing that I always appreciated and honestly respected kids for their purity. Like you mentioned, you know, they have such an innocent mind that, you know, their creativity is boundless. You know, it's always something that I've tried to express in my art as well. You know, having that young state of mind.
Yeah, that's very important. And I think that it inspires a lot of artists. If you can hold on to that kind of childhood, imaginative expressivity, then you can get a lot out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, pure expressiveness.
I know that you're still getting established, figuring out how to get into the scene, kind of polishing your style and everything like that. What have you learned so far that's kind of helped you get where you are today? What kind of like tips can you give people who might still be in high school or just starting out in the art world?
I would definitely say, you know, if you're trying to get established, the best thing to do is just try to be as socially out there as you can, involved in art. Um, you know, especially if you're in high school, I think that's like where it's at right there. You know, to get started. You know, because they have art classes, you know, with other kids that you can talk to, and you know, the more people that you talk to, that's just more opportunities. You know, especially just even if they don't provide opportunities, just having those people to talk to and people in that community, that's the best thing for it. You know, 'cause especially if you all are able to, you know, work off of each other's ideas and create new things, like that's how you branch out, and that's how you get out there and, you know, get more things going.
Yeah, so use the resources that you're given and really kind of take every opportunity that you can to talk and collaborate with other artists.
Right. And you also have to be willing to go like reach out, and, you know, like especially in situations where you know, you don't know where to look and things like that, you know, because I'm constantly in that situation where you're not really sure what step to take and things like that. But until I reached out to Asia, I would never found out about you all, you know. And it's things like that that's really made me realize that I was doing it wrong the whole time. You know, it's just you really have to reach out as much as possible. You can't expect change until you change something.
So I know you said that you're still kind of getting settled and everything's kind of coming together for you now. But where can people kind of find your art and find more about you and things like that?
I do have an Instagram page. It's the underscore Baus, Baus underscore artist. Yeah, definitely check out my Instagram page. That's the only one I really have set up at the moment. I'm trying to get more established in that sense.
Thank you, Trey, for coming in, talking about your art. We love it, obviously, and we can't wait to see more from you.
Thank you for the opportunity.